So the things that tend to honestly frustrate me in games are not the things that are really, really, really bad. It's the things that are so close to being good. They just need like one or two updates. Like if Maniac had like two lines in the patch notes that just changed small things, it would go from frankly a kind of mediocre, outdated path to like actually a good path. It's been since it came out, it's kind of been outclassed by the Confessor like update that Confessor got, and like antagonists, like similar paths that are sort of these negative token based paths. You know, you're talking about like new physician, post steadfast steward physician. Um, Maniac's just been kind of outclassed, and Maniac was a really interesting path when it first came out because the old path system was really just you might have a tank path and you might have a damage path, and then maybe you get a third unique one like you know, you think like old alchemist, old warlock, where it's just minus health plus damage, which is fine. It was fine at the time, but um, the paths that have come out since then are a lot more innovative, a lot more unique, and honestly, overall a lot cooler. And Maniac is it's on the new path system, but it's the oldest set of paths from then. And I really like it as a path. It just kind of needs some updates. So I was playing Maniac, and I was like, man, this is just kind of frustrating because it's just so close to being good. So I was like, you know what? I was like, oh, it'd be better if it had this. It'd better be if it had this. And then I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna make a mod out of it, and I'm just gonna have my own Maniac rework. The mod is in the description, which I will likely keep saying. If you would like to actually play this, and any feedback that you have would be cool. You can drop it in the comments or stop by my stream or anything. Um, just give me feedback, positive or negative. The goal basically was to just modernize the path. The comparisons that I kind of gave it to as far as the path kind of rework was like a Venom drop, Ritualist, and then like what Confessor and Chaplain got. So it's like mostly the same path, but it's just with a couple. It's just with some quality of life changes and a couple extra tools. It's mostly the same path. There's just really a couple of changes, and I'm aiming for a power level that is within what is the current Darkest Dungeon 2 range. So I'm not trying to beat Scourge. I'm not trying to have it be the best path in the world. And I want it to be I wanted this to feel like a path that would actually be in the game. Just to get some discussion going of a path like Maniac receiving a couple of updates and really kind of like being good. So if you don't know who I am, I stream every day, twitch.tv/MarinerHawk. I have like 3,600 hours at this point in the game. Um, and I devoted I think it was like 4 or 5 streams to basically just testing this out in confessions, making some small updates. I'll talk about kind of some of the changes that I made just for anybody who's interested in the process of it. But I wanted this to feel like an actual path that would be in the game, and I think at least for what I was going for, I think it's executed well, at least in my opinion. You can love it or you can hate it, but I think for what I was going for, I think I did a good job. So the first thing I want to do, give me a couple minutes. I want to highlight some of the modders in this community. So first of all, I want to point out Christian. So it's Chris Diaz. He's the one who actually made this into a mod. The thumbnail is right there. He's the one that actually made this into a mod. I don't have any experience. I have experience coding my own game and doing some things, but I don't have any experience with making things into mods. So basically, I just put it in the Discord, and I was like, hey, was there anybody that would like to help me out? I would like to commission a mod. It's all stuff that's mostly in the game already, but I have no idea how to do it with the mod tools. We'll pay you. So Christian ended up being the person that answered first and the person that ended up making this mod. So Christian's a good modder. These are examples of kind of what he has. I told him I hated him because he has a no more leper mod. And he sucks for that. Leper haters out. But yeah, so Christian worked with me. I knew that I would be kind of a pain in the ass with this because I wanted to get this just right, so it made a lot of changes, and it was about testing and stuff. So I've thanked him many times, but thank you again, Christian, for being wonderful to work with and not hating me too much with all the changes that I made. I knew I was going to be a pain in the ass. I tried to warn him in the beginning. Um, yeah, Christian ended up making this. Thank you very much. Please check out his other mods. The descriptions for all these modders, or the profiles for all these modders, will be in here. There's a lot of really good mod stuff, especially that these 3 modders are doing. Please check these out. I would very much appreciate it. The next one that I want to highlight is Rainy. Rainy also responded to my call for help, basically, but Christian had already answered first. So I felt bad that I wasted Rainy's time, but Rainy, in the conversations we have, seems like a wonderful person. These are the mods that they have made. And then they have a leper rework that I actually really, really like. Kind of similar to the goal that I said, where it feels I wanted my Maniac rework to feel like a path that would exist in the game, and I think Rainey's leper reworks, all of the paths feel that way, and I think it's really, really cool, and I hope that Red Hook puts some of the changes that Rainey made into the game, because it just make leper a more fun of a player. Next thing up, Mr. Scrake. Mr. Scrake makes some very interesting mods. There's a full ordainment rework right here if you would like to check it out. That's also in the description. Mr. Scrake is a friend of the stream. I just wanted to shout him out in general. I did not make a slide for Tranquil, but I would also like to call it Tranquil. Tranquil is a wonderful modder and person in the DD2 community in general, and makes some really interesting mods, including a DD1 style chibi big head mod that I like to use on stream. So I like Tranquil also. Please check out any of these modding profiles in there. This Ordainment is one, especially Mr. Scrake's. Ordainment is really good. This one is really good if you like a lot of buffs. There's a lot going on. Mr. Scrake has a lot of hours in this game, so I just wanted to shout him out also. So, first thing I want to do is I want to show the current math of Maniac. So, to show you why Maniac maybe falls a little below what I would like a path to feel like. So, this is all stuff that we know, but I just wanted to put it together. Punish is 10%, does 10% damage to him. Deathless is 20, Acid Rain is 10, Undying is 10. So just to give you a little base math. So the self-damage, let's show off the self-healing. So Lash's Gift is 20% unmastered, 30% mastered, but it has a 2-turn cooldown. So you can only use it once every 3 turns. That, you can get one, it heals the same amount as Deathless does, but Lashes, and obviously Lashes does more stuff. It pulls tokens, right? But this has kind of a clunky feeling where you're like, it's got a 2-turn cooldown. So you do what? Let's say Deathless Punish, right? So that's 30%. So this require a couple of issues with this. Is first of all, the damage does more than the healing unmastered, and if you want to match it, you have to master it, which is an extra mastery point that really, in my opinion, feels like it's necessary. And that to me is a problem, because you create this mastery hungry. There's a difference between mastery hungry and mastery like you need it, right? Because this is almost unplayable unmastered, to be honest. At least if you're trying to do anything other than just kind of, if you're trying to play within the scope of the rework, which is like you do this, you pull the tokens and you throw it on the enemies, it creates kind of like some issues. So more is the most effective way of healing, which to me is a problem, because more is already a really good path, and this Maniac gives you extra ways of healing. I think if anything, this should be a path where more is changed, and they didn't. I think if this path was made nowadays, I think more would be a different ability. It wouldn't be a healing ability. And then you look at Sepsis. Sepsis is a 35% heal, but, and this is a big issue in my opinion, is it has a 3-turn cooldown, and it has 2 uses, or 3 uses if you master it. This Lashes in Darkest Dungeon 2 nowadays, this is not such a strong ability that this needs a 2-turn cooldown, and Sepsis is not so strong that it needs a 3-turn cooldown. Maybe when it first came out, absolutely, I would say, because it was a really strong ability in that time. But nowadays, this just feels more. There are stronger abilities. I mean, if you even talk like Scourge Deathless, there are stronger abilities with smaller cooldown. To me, that feels kind of weird in the game. Just to add a little bit of extra math to this, so I created this healing per turn metric. So what that is whatever the healing percentage is divided by the cooldown plus 1. So the cooldown plus 1 being, if this is a 2-turn cooldown, you can only use it one of every 3 turns. So to give you kind of idea of how efficient these abilities are as far as healing, you get about a 7% healing per turn, which is not even enough to use a single ability. And they use its Sepsis. Even Sepsis Unmastered is less than 10%, and that has a usage limit and a 3-turn cooldown. So you don't have to memorize these by any chance, or by any a definition, but I just want to show you just like some little bit of metrics. And even if you master Lashes, again, it's still got a 2-turn cooldown. It only makes up per turn about the healing from this. And to me, and I think if you've ever played Maniac, or if you played it recently, in the way that it's supposed to be, not supposed to be played, but within the scope of the path, I think you'll feel that it's not very good at the healing. And then again, more, depending on how many tokens you get, you're probably gonna get at least 2, if not 3. And you can see that this is the best healing that it is. The best healing that you get is through more, which to me is a problem, just because it doesn't play into the path as much. It doesn't do anything interesting with the path. It just heals. So again, just to give you an idea of a little bit of a healing, you barely get over 10% at best per turn healing based on that. So talk about more about the current problems of what Maniac. The current problems that, in my opinion, it suffers from. So the first thing, practice is pretty restrictive on skills, leaving only one skill slot for Endure, Acid Rain, More, Undying, and Suffer. So this asterisk here is basically if you try to play it with most of its skills, if you play this as like a slightly different Wanderer, so basically you would run just like Punish, Deathless, More, you know, whatever else you would play with that. If you play it as basically just a Wanderer with a Punish Pushback and a slightly different Acid Rain, you don't run into these issues. But if you try to play with the actual, you're pulling negative tokens from the team and you're throwing it onto the enemy. Or if you get negative tokens yourself and you throw it onto the enemy. If you're trying to play it into that, which is like again, I don't want to say like that's the way you're supposed to play it. That's the way that the path was kind of intended, I guess. If you're playing it at what I would believe its full potential is, it's a pretty restrictive path. And even if you don't go Deathless, which this is meant to be sort of a healing path a little bit also, even if you didn't go Deathless, that's still Punish, Lash's Sepsis that you need. Basically absolutely need. And the rest of these abilities, with the exception of maybe Endure, but you would put this into a certain team. Acid Rain, More, Undying, and Suffer are all paths that you would like to be able to put onto him based on the team comp. Like if you wanted him to be your dot healer, obviously he's not as good of a dot healer as like Plague Doctor or Vestal. You would put Suffer on, or you would want to put Acid Rain on if you want to weaken the backline. But really, realistically, obviously, of these 5 paths, like with any other Flagellant path, or with these 5 skills, like with any other Flagellant path, More is going to be the one that wins. And More is basically a necessity on this path. The path doesn't heal enough to justify not running More due to Lashes and Sepsis cooldowns. So Lashes, like More, you could make a legitimate argument. I mean, More is definitely a better healing ability than Lashes or Sepsis. So you could make an argument that More is better than Lashes and Sepsis, but it only has a 1-turn cooldown. So basically, you have to run, you know, Punish, Deathless, Lashes, Sepsis, More every time. Maybe you can take off Deathless, but that's still like 4. That's still like 4 skills. So it's just a very restrictive path. We talk about this like with Seraph, where you have to run Judgment, both Consecrations, and Divine Grace, so it leaves you only 1 slot. It's kind of similar, except Seraph is better at kind of at what it does. Obviously, you don't have to run Consecrations, but you know what I mean. If you want to play it at the best part of the path, or whatever you want to call it. So this is restrictive, but it's not. It's restrictive in an unfun way, where at least Seraph is like really strong. So another issue is that the path really struggles with the threat of death, doing to Punish Pushback, the Long Lashes, Sepsis cooldowns, and the Sepsis usage limit. So I don't think that every path needs to have. I don't think that every path needs to be great against death. That's okay, but the Punish, pushing back, allowing Trample to hit harder kind of sucks, and there's not much you can do about that unless you did some weird thing like if against death then Punish pulls, but that'd be kind of like tacky in my opinion. But this path in general, you always kind of need to worry about death because of, you know, if you have like, if you're playing Scourge, you have like Deathless useless, right? You got to be careful about that. But getting caught when you have Lashes on cooldown and you have Sepsis, like maybe you've used it once and it's on cooldown, it feels really, really, really bad. And it's just another thing. In my opinion, it punishes you extra playing Maniac, and you just don't get the benefits in the same way that you do with like Scourge or like something else like that. So it doesn't need to counter death. I don't try to say that by any means, but it does feel especially bad. You feel it's such a disadvantage when death spawns, to the point where it's not fun, at least in my opinion. Lashes 2-turn cooldown feels clunky. That's another thing. Because again, as I mentioned, it's not strong enough of an ability nowadays to require a 2-turn cooldown. If you look at the other 2-turn cooldowns in the game, they're typically a lot stronger than that. So I don't like that. It's either 2 things. It's either got to heal more. It's either got to heal more like Sepsis levels where it's like 35% or 50, or you got to lower the cooldown. Those were the 2 ideas basically that I had, and I'll show you what I ended up going with. Another issue is that Punish allows for an aggressive, disrupting playstyle that's tough to utilize in current Maniac. Again, this asterisk meaning if you're playing Maniac with all the skills as opposed to just like a slightly different Wanderer. And slightly different Wanderer works, by the way, but I think it still works with my rework also. Punish is a really, when you master it especially, because it knockbacks too and combos, that's a really, for being a relatively simple ability, that's a really, really strong ability. Pushbacks and disruptions in general in this game are really, really strong, but Punish, you can't, you can use it typically in Maniac, but you can't really be aggressive with it because it's just hard to heal it. Unless you have a second healer that only heals Flagellant, which is possible, I guess. But it does hurt a little bit what your team comp can do, basically. Healing wise, I try to think of this as like similar to like a Banneret. Because Banneret can be a solo healer, kind of. It's probably better to have at least one person that can heal themselves, but I'm considering it from a healing standpoint, kind of around like a Banneret, where you don't really want it to be a solo heal, like the only heal that you have in the team, but it's a really strong like secondary heal, and that's kind of what I was going with Maniac. But Punish, I really, really like Punish. I think it allows for some really interesting playstyles, but I don't think you just don't get to use it very much unless you're doing that like slightly different one. Struggles that as a team's main healer due to poor self healing. Again, to consider it like a Banneret kind of style, it doesn't need to be. I'm not trying to be like a Plague Doctor or a Vestal, but when you're doing just on your own, even if he was in a bubble and enemies couldn't hurt him, he's hurting himself more than he's healing the allies. And the it just is like they should be relatively even, you would think, but it's like he hurts himself more and then he heals a little bit, hurts himself more, heals a little bit. So it just feels like it's even at what it's intended to do, it's just not very good. Then another problem is that it feels very mastery hungry. Do 20% lashes heal on mastered and 2 uses on sepsis. Again, I think there's a difference between mastery hungry and mastery like needed. And this, it's needed. Like I believe that it's needed. I believe that it crosses that line into it's just too mastery hungry to the point where it's a pain in the ass and it's actually like hurting the rest of your team because you can't mastery points in general should be mastery points, at least in my opinion, or they are in the game, that like feel good, but they aren't. You need to do it for the most part. Think of like a pistol shot, right? Pistol shot dazes into combo and stuns into combo when it's mastered. So you think of that, like where you're like, oh, I have unmastered pistol shot. This just sucks. It's not really like that. It's really just like you master it and you're like, all right, cool. That's a nice like quality of life thing. There are some things, like meditation where you feel like you do kind of need it mastered, and that's okay. But you'd rather have more luxury masteries than like needed masteries. So my goals in creating this path essentially are reduce the skill set being restrictive. The more restrictive it is, I think the less fun a path is, because in theory, Maniac or Flagellant in general should be able to fit into a comp where he needs to stress heal, where he can stress heal the team or kind of stress heal the team. He should be able to fit into one where he can use Undying if the team's less tanky. He should be able to be the dot heal sometimes. And the step down obviously is Endure and Suffer are not the best at what they do in the game, which is fine. But you should be able to run those abilities, in my opinion, in a situation where you need them in a certain team comp. This is a path that could feel like it fits into a bunch of different team comps, but it kind of doesn't because it requires another healer, etc., etc. So I wanted to open up basically the paths that you can use into this. Another thing is I wanted to reduce the clunky feeling of the path. So clunky feeling of the path means, let's say you use Lashes and then Sepsis. Lashes is still on cooldown for another one. You turn 1 Lashes, turn 2 Sepsis, turn 3, you still have Lashes for another cooldown, for another turn cooldown, which feels kind of awkward because, again, you need that healing, at least in my opinion, and then you still have Sepsis being on cooldown for a little bit more. So hopefully if you've played Maniac, you kind of know what I mean when I say it feels kind of clunky. It just doesn't feel like a path where you're constantly doing something good. It feels like a path where you do something that's okay, and then you gotta wait, and then you do something okay, and then you gotta wait, and it just doesn't feel very fluid, in my opinion. And I also wanted to reduce the reliance on the second healer, meaning if you want to run him as the only healer of the team, you can, but again, similar to like a Banneret, it has downsides with it. Instead of having a second healer that kind of has to heal him, and that's it. He will always have. He doesn't have 2 really solid heals like a Vestal does or like a Plague Doctor one. He does have Undying and Deathless, So it's possible. But he doesn't have those two big heals. Again, similar to like a Banneret. So I understand he's never going to be that medic style, and I'm totally okay with that. But want him just be a little better as a healer. So I'm gonna break down all the changes that I made. To the skills. So I'm gonna go skill by skill, show you exactly the old tip, the current tooltip, I guess, and then my tooltip. So I'll show you all of those. First thing you want to show is the path skills. So there are 7 path skills on this. I added more necrosis and suffer just to add some extra changes into the path. For what it's worth, there are 2 paths, and if it seems like this is a lot of path skills, there's 7. There are 2 paths in the game. A little trivia question: there are 2 paths in the game that have 7 affected skills. 6 is relatively common. There's maybe 4, 5, 6 paths that are like that. There are 2 paths that currently have 7. I'll put the answer in the description. Just as a little trivia question, think about it, what those 2 paths are, if you can come up with it. I think they'll make sense when you see what they are. But having 7 path skills is not unseen in this game, right? So if you change all 11 skills, that doesn't happen. Again, one of the ideas with this path is I wanted to feel like a path that's in the game. Not just some path that just some dumb modder made, and it's really broken or really stupid. So those are the path skills. First change I want to show off is punish. I only made 1 change to punish, and that's you can use it in rank 4. And the reason I made that is because with current Maniac, you can already use lashes, sepsis, and deathless. You can already, and even suffer. You can already use most of his abilities in rank 4. You create this weird thing where you can play Maniac in rank 4, but you can't use punish. So you're stuck with like acid rain if you want to have a damage ability, or you're stuck with a hero without a damage ability, which in my experience feels kind of bad. I do not think that this is such a strong path that it really needs to be gated by not being playable in rank 4. So this is just a simple change, basically, just to be able to play it in rank 4 if you would like. There are still a couple abilities that you don't get, so there's a little bit of a downside. He's best as the same with current Maniac. He's best in ranks 2 and 3. So I stuck with that, but I did want to give the option to play in rank 4 if you can. So I'll show Acid Rain. Again, Acid Rain is another small change that I made. The only change that I made is that on current Maniac, there's no combo. Unmastered, there's no combo chance. I added a 25% combo chance unmastered because it's the same as Abyssal and the same as Blinding Gas. That's what Blinding Gas and Abyssal have. They have a 25% chance of combo unmastered and a 33% mastered, just to kind of bring it in line with those paths. It's a similar ability. It doesn't do a lot of damage. The weak token is nice, but just to bring it in line kind of with those abilities. And in my opinion, I don't think that that's like too busted of a change to not be able to make. So Lash's Gift, still the same ability. I changed a little bit. So to go over the changes, first thing I did is I changed the cooldown from 2 to 1. So again, I flirted with the idea of making it a much bigger heal. So make it like a 40% unmastered to 50% mastered and still have that 2-turn cooldown. But in my opinion, I think it's better to keep that, to make it a 1-turn cooldown and keep it as a small heal that you get every other turn, as opposed to a big heal like Sepsis, like a big heal where you get, every few turns. So first thing I did to make it a 1-turn cooldown, because I think this, again, in 2-turn cooldown, I think it makes sense more when the game came out, but nowadays it's not such a strong ability that it needs a 2-turn. I also added the skills ignore blind onto it, and the reason that I did that is because if you pull a blind token in yourself on current Maniac, it kind of locks you into using Sepsis, because you don't want to lashes and then punish and just miss. That feels kind of bad. In my experience, the new paths in this game have these quality of life kind of things where they're just small changes, but it just makes the path a little more fluid and makes the path feel better. So it's only for 1 turn, so you could lashes, and then you can lashes and punish if you want, without having to worry about that blind. You could hold on to that blind and then use it in the turn after, or if you really want to hold on to that blind token, you're going to have to use lashes again. So it wasn't meant to be a really big buff. It's just meant to not lock you into having to use Sepsis on the next turn, or either use Punish into a blind token. Excuse me. The other change I made is that Unmastered heals 30%, and the reason that I did that is because 20% is just not enough. With the cooldown that it has, It's just not enough. It's just a feel good, basically, aspect to not require nearly as much mastery. Um, this allows you to get a 30% heal and use deathless or whatever and still and not come out like neutral. Because again, and this is gonna sound stupid, but a thing about Maniac is you're getting hit by the enemies at the same time also. So you might do this math in your head where you're like, okay, if I heal 20% and then I do 20%, that's neutral, and then I can just keep going like that. But obviously you're still getting hit at the same time. So you might go neutral, but then if you get hit for, I don't know, 5 or whatever, that throws kind of your math off. So that was the idea behind that. What Master does now is it actually takes the whole team's negative tokens. So Lash's Gift is a luxury mastery now, but it's a nice luxury mastery. And I like this idea. I don't think it's that busted because with the exception of like an exaltation from the Cardinal where the whole team gets negative tokens, typically you're probably not taking more than 1 or 2 token, maybe 3 tokens when you do this negative tokens. So it's not like the whole team's blinded, vulnerable, and weakened, and then you pull it all, and you kind of, it's not typically like that. So this isn't, in my opinion, it's not too strong to kind of exist in the game. It's strong against the baby for sure with the hunger tokens, but it already kind of is, so I don't think that's a huge jump. But I do think, at least when I play this, I think it was fun. I enjoyed having that. It doesn't feel too busted, but it feels like a very interesting use of the ability. So it's Lash's Gift. Next up, more. Don't hate me, okay? I changed more no longer heals, okay? Stay with me here. Don't punch your monitors, okay? I think if there's any path that Maniac can have a different more, it should be this one, but again, because he has alternate ways of healing. So I decided try to come up with an idea where more would be different. And I think nowadays, if the path came out, I think more would be different, in my opinion. I think it would be, because this feels like one of those skills that would be different, maybe not on every path, but at least on a path like this. So what I did is I made it usable in the 2 and 3 ranks, first of all. Instead of the 1 and 2, you already can't use lashes in rank 1 on this, and acid rain on current Maniac. So I think this kind of makes sense for it to be a more rank 2 and 3 path instead of 1 and 2, excuse me. So this is where I was talking about where if you did decide to play Flagellin in rank 4, you're missing out on more, which more is I tried to make a luxury, not a necessity. And again, I keep bringing that up, but I tried to make the healing of the rest of his paths better, or the rest of his skills better, to make more kind of different. So more self to apply to attacker when attack. So I made this similar to smokescreen on Survivor. So basically what it does is he marks himself. It's the same as more now. He marks himself, and every enemy that hits him between now and his next turn gets a weak or a vulnerable token, which I think is cool. It's nice to kind of pass those out. I don't feel like that's too busted to have. And it's just kind of nice to just kind of hand out those negative tokens. And self-immobilize. Now, this is for 2 reasons. This is for 1, if death spawns, you have a little bit of a safety net if you happen to run more. You have a little bit of a safety net in case you feel like she's going to trample. So you have a little bit of a safety net. Not that he's a little more rank flexible now than what with my mod than kind of like current Maniac, but it's just a little bit of a tool if death spawns, if you want it. If you don't care, that's fine. And it gives him access to immobilize on demand. So if you do want to pull somebody up with somebody else and then immobilize him, it gives him a tool for that. So this path sort of indirectly gives him access to every negative token, but some more often than others. But I think that's interesting to be able to kind of hand those. He doesn't have any dazes or stuns, but to be able to kind of have at least a little bit of access to immobilize, a good immobilize can put you in a good situation, in the right situation. It's a small thing. You can just ignore it, or you can just keep it where it's at. So for the master version of more, I gave him this self-blind token also. And the reason that I did this is to give him access to a blind token if he would like it. Just a blind token if he would like to. And again, I added this skills ignore thing so that you're not locked into more into sepsis. You can more and punish or whatever, but then you're gonna have to do something with the blind token after that. So this path in general, or this skill in general, gives him access to weak tokens, vulnerable tokens, immobilize, and blind if you would like it, if you would like to master it. But again, he doesn't heal in any way. So I feel like that's a fair trade-off. More is still a strong ability. I kind of wanted it to be an ability that you take off, period. Like you don't need it as much, but it still ended up being kind of a strong ability. You can go without it, but it's still a pretty strong one. But it doesn't heal, so don't hate me too much. I hope you understand. So let's talk about Suffer now. So some small changes to Suffer that I made just to make it again. I think it would be nice if if the game had access to another dot healer, and you can use Suffer as it is, but it feels it does fall short of Battlefield Medicine and Ministrations, which is fine. Don't get me wrong, but I wanted to give it a little bit of a boost on this, just in case you wanted to take sort of that risk and have him a solo um, God healer. So what I ended up going with is unmastered. He gets a pain token when he uses it, so it gets him a little bit of healing. Just a single pain token, basically, no matter what. Now, mastered. So what mastered does is think of this like more and more. So what it does is you use the ability, and at the end of next turn, you get the pain tokens. It's the same sort of thing. So you use Suffer at the end of his next turn, he gets pain plus tokens based on how many or the different types of dots that he has. So kind of similar to like Surgeon Battlefield Medicine, where you get extra healing based on the amount of dots that they have. Same thing. So he's going to either get a 15%, a 30%, or 45% heal. For what it's worth, going into kind of looking at the enemies in general, other than really Hollow Vessel, or if you have something like the Oozes, not very often are you going to get 3 dots. So that I was going back and forth about whether Pain Plus felt like too strong, but in reality, if you use this, you're probably going to get either a 15% or 30% heal. Not very often you're going to be able to pull all 3 dots. So I felt like it was balanced enough, in my opinion, in order to kind of justify the Pain Plus. And it gives you just an extra reason for the people that like Suffer, just an extra reason for him to get Suffer that isn't just, plus test or resist is nice, but in reality, how often are you actually going to use that? Are you actually going to get value out of that? Very, very rarely. So I gave it the healing alongside the Death Door Resist, just as a little kind of, change. Sepsis, I didn't really change. I just added a couple of things. The first thing I added is, again, like I mentioned earlier, cooldown 3 with 2 uses is way too mean nowadays. The Sepsis is not that good of an ability compared to some of the other things that hand out negative tokens. You talk like Confessor Hand of Light. I'm probably the only person that runs Confessor Hand of Light, right? But that does add weak tokens to the front line, and it doesn't have a cooldown, so you can just constantly do that. You look at like Yop and hand 2 weak tokens to the front line. Even Judgment on Confessor, same thing. Like, it hands out a lot of tokens. Sepsis does not, just because it heals, it does not require this anymore, in my opinion. So I kept it at a 2 cooldown, but I removed its useless limit. So that's another aspect where I was talking about where you don't have to be as terrified of death spawning anymore because of the lack of usage limit. So that's kind of nice. Also, still has a long cooldown. You still got to think about when you want to use it, but it's not something that has to really scare you. You're kind of like nervous, at least in my experience, you're kind of nervous to press the button because you just don't know if death's going to spawn or not. And then I changed the if under 50% to if under 25%. So the reason this if 20 or is below 50%, the reason you can use Sepsis on that is because it requires your allies to have negative tokens. Sometimes they're not going to get negative, so he can't even heal in that situation. You might be kind of low and you might not want to press more, but he can't even heal in that situation. So the reason I kept this is just because, in case you happen to run into that situation, but I don't think it's going to happen super often because more grants him negative tokens, and obviously more does on current Maniac also, but those taunt tokens are going to get used up in all likelihood by the time that his next turn. So he's not going to have those taunt negative tokens to throw to the enemy, and even if he does, you don't really want to be handing taunts to the enemy anyways, because it stops your ability to attack certain targets. So I left it in there. I think the comp has enough healing to not really need this too often, but I kept it in there at a 25% because if you're not running more, then you don't get access to those. If you're running rank 4, you don't get access to those on demand. So I wanted to keep it in there in the kit as a little bit. I kept the healing the same and everything. But I don't think it needs to be under 50%. I think 25% is fair. It's supposed to be like a last resort kind of thing, not something that you use like super often. So, Necrosis. Small change in Necrosis, a couple of them. First, this I feel like is a change that would be in the path nowadays if it came out. So think something like Point Blank on Sharp Shot, right? Point Blank on Sharp Shot is the same, except it knocks him back 2 instead of knocking him back 1 because he wants to be in those 3-4 ranks. Just a nice little quality of life thing to the smallest little change, but it does make it vibe with the path better. So if you get Breach or Sharp Shot or something like that or whatever, you just want to get the damage right off the bat, you can put him into the rank that he wants to be instead of putting him in rank 2 where he equally doesn't want to be, right? So it's the same kind of idea. Requires target have negative tokens instead of requires target blight. Necrosis was basically just a dead ability on Maniac, unless you have some other people that work with it. But it's basically just a dead ability, especially with Acid Rain not blighting. The idea was Necrosis works better with this path, and I buffed it to 10% healing per target because, you look at Necrosis now. So you have, let's say he can just on like Wander or whatever path, right? He can punish rank 1, and then something like a Plague Grenade can hit ranks 3 and 4. So by turn 2, you get a 3-hit Necrosis. You can do that pretty easily, or even Instinct on Unchained, where it blights the entire team, and then you get a Necrosis, right? That doesn't really exist with negative tokens. The closest would be, again, like a Plague Grenade, or like a, Blinding Gas. So Blinding Gas blinds the backline, so that would allow for an easy Necrosis, or Confessor Hand of Light, weakening Mastered, weakening the front targets. That would allow for an easy Necrosis. But I felt comfortable buffing this to 10% for 2 reasons. For one, you can't really there's really no situations where you're going to AoE, you're going to set up for this kind of like gross Necrosis that hits the entire team. It's just not really going to happen nearly as often. You're probably going to be hitting 2 targets every time, maybe 3. So I felt comfortable doing that, and negative tokens go away also, right? Even if you could, let's say you could blind the entire enemy team. Well, when the enemy team goes, they're going to be using up those blinds. It's not like Blight sticks for 3 turns. It's not like how Blight sticks for 3 turns, right? The negative tokens are only going to last until they get used up. So another reason I felt comfortable making this a 10%. And in reality, it's probably going to be a 20% heal if you do happen to run Necrosis. You don't have to run Necrosis, but it's just an idea of if you want to run it, it works a little better with the path. So some ability synergies, just to give an idea, kind of like how to use this path. More and more into Sepsis. So more and more gives him, because it gives him the Immobilize or the Blind if you master the Immobilize and Blind, it sets you up for a Sepsis where it allows you to heal if you would like to and throw an Immobilize down in case you want it. And obviously it applies vulnerable and weak to the team also, to the enemy team also, whoever hits them, which is pretty nice. Obviously that sets up for more and more Necrosis also. More and more would hand out, weaks or vulns to whoever happens to hit the Flagellant, and then you can Necrosis from there. There is a possibility, obviously, that you could do that 4-man Necrosis like I was talking about earlier. Realistically, he's probably going to get hit 2 times because that's where the taunt is. Maybe 3, rarely 4. But if you want to do a more in a Necrosis, you can do that where it's easier to do than on this path than how it currently kind of like lasts in the game. The Asterisk was basically just like, yeah, I know you can hit 4. Realistically, you're probably not going to with Necrosis, but you can hand out the tokens into Necrosis if you'd like. So Acid Rain into Necrosis. Acid Rain into Necrosis, if it weakens the backline, again, he would have to go twice. They don't use up the weaken, but in theory, you can hit the backline for 5 to 12, depending on Mastered and depending on whatever, not even counting crits, based on the Mastery damage. So that could be good. That could be a good way to hit the backline. But again, you'd have to find a way to do it before they go, so that they don't use up the weak tokens. But technically it could work, kind of similar to like a Blinding Gas. Lashes into Sepsis. So Lashes, you can pull the target's negative tokens, or you can pull the whole team's negative tokens, and you can Sepsis it onto the target. The same as currently it is, but current Maniac, you kind of have to be you're like scared when you use it because of the turn limit, the cooldowns and the usage limit. So it's still something that exists on live, but because it has less cooldown, because it has no usage limits, it's something you can hand out a little bit more as opposed to, you know, a couple of times a fight. And then you have Lash's Gift into Punish or Acid Rain, and more plus into Punish and Acid Rain. This is because of the ignoring the blind token, because again, on current, if you lashes a blind token, kind of stuck into Sepsis or rolling the coin flip and trying to hit, which in my opinion doesn't feel very good. So I think the skills ignore blind for one turn, I think feels good. It allows you to pivot if you need to. Where if something happens between, you know, his Lash's turn and the next turn, you can punish an enemy back to save your um some you know, damage basically, or whatever you would basically need to do. I think skills ignore blind. I think that feels pretty good. So some potential skill sets that you could kind of run if you wanted to test this out, or just kind of as a thought experiment. An aggressive style playstyle is something that I like, again, on current Maniac, but I think it just doesn't work. You're spending too much time using lashes and more and sepsis for healing, and it doesn't really work out. So for something like this, you could run like Punish, more, Acid Rain, Sepsis, and Necrosis. So it still gives you still have Sepsis and Necrosis for healing if you would like. More would pass out negative tokens to the team, so you could potentially Necrosis them. Or you could Sepsis in order to do that. Punish allows you to set up a combo if you do master it, which is nice, which can be nice also. Acid Rain allows you to apply weaks. You can't really run this, in my opinion, on current. Well, definitely you can't because of Necrosis, but on current Maniac, you just kind of can't. You know, Sepsis and Lashes are kind of, if you really want good value in handing out the negative tokens, Lashes and Sepsis are pretty stuck together. They're pretty paired. But with my rework, you don't have to run Lashes or Sepsis, or Lashes and Sepsis together. That's nice. It opens up a skill slot to run whatever you want to do. If you still want to do the heal tank kind of thing that he is now, you can run Punish, Lashes, Sepsis, or more Necrosis. Again, more Necrosis sets up for that potential combo or a combination right there. And Lashes and Sepsis, you don't have to be scared about having the usage limit, so that's kind of nice. Team utility. This would be more. This is another thing that I kind of try to open up with Maniac, because normally you can't. You don't get to run like Suffer or Endure or Undying typically, because you're so locked into the other abilities. But this would be something that I would like to work on my Maniac, but not on the current Maniac. So we have Punish, Lashes, Sepsis, again, a solid trio right there, and then Deathless and everybody to heal the team. Like you can run Suffer, Endure basically on what your team needs. Obviously, Endure is, you know, maybe not the greatest ability. Suffer is pretty all right though. This heal tank specifically, the reason I didn't have Deathless on it is because this is more just basically like something like a Poet is kind of like the example that I would go to, where he's pretty self-sufficient, but he also tanks pretty well and has some utility. Same kind of idea. And then if you wanted to run rank 4, you do not get access to sorry, you don't get access to Necrosis or more. So there is a downside to running rank 4, but I think it's still possible. You could run Punish, Deathless, Acid Rain, Lashes, and Sepsis. Still allows you to disrupt and allows you to weak if you would like, alongside taking the team's negative tokens and throwing it onto the enemy. So the downside being, again, you don't get Necrosis and more. But I think the path still works if you don't have those two. And if you wanted to run something with no Lashes, where I said, again, because no Lashes and Sepsis pretty much are linked together in current Maniac. It just kind of doesn't work without it. This would be a way to do it. You could do Punish, more, Sepsis, Necrosis, and whatever you want for the last one. You could do Deathless, Undying, Endure, Suffer, whatever your team needed. So as you can see, the setup for, you can run Maniac, I think, with this mod in different teams, because it allows you to run. You can decide to heal the team or not. You can decide to dot heal the team or not. You can decide to stress heal the team or not. So it gives you, basically, you can play it more aggressive. You can play it more defensive. You can play it like a Poet. You can play it like, you know, something like a Confessor. Like I like what it opens up for. So to revisit the problem slide that I had before, pretty restrictive on skills. My solution to that is the more change allows a skill set drop Lashes. More is now a luxury pick instead of a necessity for healing. So you don't have to run more. You can if you want. What this first sentence means is more into sepsis is something that you can do because of the immobilize and the immobilize blind, as opposed to a current maniac where if you more, if the taunt tokens get used up, you don't have negative tokens that you can throw on them anymore. So I think my mod fixes this problem. It allows different team comps and different skills to be able to run. The path doesn't heal enough not to justify running more. I think the lashes and sepsis buffs, alongside adding suffer and necrosis, allows for different ways of healing. Obviously, I take away the more healing of this. But in my opinion, I think necrosis being usable, suffer having some healing, and then lashes and sepsis being buffed, I think that offsets more not healing anymore, at least in my opinion. Obviously, you can try it out. You might have a different opinion. You can try it out if you'd like. Maybe I'm wrong, but in my testing, which again, I spent 4 or 5 streams testing this. In my testing, I think it feels pretty good for what I was trying to go for. So path struggles with the threat of death due to punish pushback and then the lashes and sepsis cooldowns. The immobilize on more gives defense during death fight if you want, if you really don't want to get shuffled. And then sepsis no longer having a usage limit means you can throw that around pretty much whenever you want. Obviously, you still have to worry about the 2-turn cooldown, but at least you're not stuck with no sepsis, or you're not stuck with the sepsis on 3 cooldowns, or you're not stuck with 1 sepsis. I think that feels a lot better in my opinion. And then the lashes 2 cooldown feels clunky. I made it a 1-turn cooldown now. This is really kind of similar to the reason that like more in general on Flagellant hasn't been a 2-turn cooldown, because it would just feel kind of clunky. It'd feel a little slow, at least in my opinion. So anything that has a 2-turn cooldown in this game has to feel really strong, and it has to probably like hit the entire team. So punish allows for an aggressive disrupting playstyle. It's tough to utilize in current Maniac. Again, if you're playing it to its if you're playing more than just like a slightly different Wanderer, more change allows the skill set to drop lashes, and more is now a luxury pick instead of a necessity for healing. So because he gets healing in better healing and in different ways, you can be a little more aggressive with punish. You'll still have to have that turn probably where you heal, unless you're running somebody that heals him. But you can use punish more often and more aggressively instead of just using it every like few turns. Struggles as a team main healer due to poor self healing. Never going to be a Vestal or a Plague Doctor, but it's similar in effectiveness to Banneret, which I keep pointing out. My goal is to not make it a Vestal or a Plague Doctor where it can heal the entire team. Just the fact that Deathless has a cooldown and can only hit 1 target is going to be a downside, quote unquote. But again, it's similar to Banneret in my opinion, where if you have the right team around it, where everybody has their self-healing, you have like Grave Robber, Leper, A-Bomb, something like that. I think this will do well as a team's main healer. In my practice, I tried to do different kind of comps when I was testing it, and that's what I came up with. So it feels mastery hungry due to lashes, 20% lashes heal unmastered, 2 uses on sepsis. Unmastered abilities are strong enough early, and mastered adds nice upgrades, similar to a path like Poet or Confessor. Similar path like Poet or Confessor in the sense of the masteries feel good, not super needed. You don't need, again with Pistol Shot also, you don't need to turn that daze into a stun, but it's nice if you can. With Poet, you don't need to turn that Solemnity heal into a bigger heal, into a 75% heal, but it's nice. Purge doesn't need to combo, but it's nice when you do. It's a psychological standpoint. It does feel bad, especially if you have multiple heroes that need those combos or need those mastery points. Sorry, it can feel pretty bad. So I think I made it so that the punish. Well, it was already like that, but punish pushing back and comboing is a luxury. It's not a necessity. Lashes taking the negative tokens from the entire team, or whatever the exact change might be. Suffer adding getting rid of the dots alongside giving pain plus tokens. So again, going back to the path goals, reduce the skills being restrictive. I believe I did that. There are a few different skill sets that you can run that are pretty different, all things considering, not just like one skill switched out or whatever. But more importantly, you're not locked into one style, and I believe that kind of current Maniac deals with that. Reduce the clunky feeling of the path. I believe that with lashes having a 1-turn cooldown, sepsis having a 2-turn cooldown instead of a 3, alongside the skills ignore blind on lashes and mastered more, you don't really run into these situations, in my opinion, where you're stuck and you feel like the path's kind of working against you. I think I did a good enough job with that. And then reduce the reliance on the second healer, allowing you more healing options and the healing options be a little better and less mastery hungry. I think I was able to do that again, similar to sort of a Banneret, where I think with current Maniac, you need somebody almost like designated to heal him because of how slow his healing is and how like turn gated it is, or turn cooldown gated it is. Okay, so let's go ahead and revisit the math. I moved my cam. You'll see why in a second. To revisit the math. So if we assume more gives you 2 pain tokens, which is about on average since it has 2 taunt tokens. So it gives you 20% from lashes, 20% from more, 35% from sepsis. That puts you at 75%. If you were to, in a hypothetical situation where you were going to press this, press these abilities in a row, but again, you have the cooldowns with it too. And then mastered allows you, it's about 30% from more, 30% from lashes gift, 50 from sepsis, puts you at about 110% healing. So my rework ended up about the same. And there's a lot of ifs because it depends. You're probably not running all 4 of these abilities. I guess you could, but you're probably choosing, if anything, running lashes, sepsis, and then one of suffer and necrosis, or just lashes or whatever. So there's a lot of ifs, right, with this. But just to get into the math, so we have, if you use lashes, sepsis, and suffer, that puts you at 75% right there. Or if you use lashes and sepsis, you know, with necrosis, let's say that's a 20, it puts you at about 85. So you see that the healing is similar. And if you look at the healing per turn, which was a goal of this, the healing per turn goes up. So we have sepsis right here. It goes up to at least, everything is about 10%, with the exception of suffer. It's about 10% if we assume necrosis hits 2 targets, because you're probably not using it on a single target. Everything is about more than 10%. So it gives you more than what punish or acid rain or undying costs. But again, that's also considering the enemies are going to be hitting you also. So I don't think per turn healing less than the damage that you're doing yourself is a good idea, even in practice, or even in a bubble. But in practice, I think it's even worse considering the enemy is hitting you also. This puts you around 75%. And then if you look at mastered, it puts you about, let's say if it's a 30% here, 50% here, and then let's say 30% because if you're using suffer for 2 dots. So again, that puts you at about 110. You know, if you do 30 and 50 and then 2 necrosis, that puts you at about 100%. So the healing is pretty similar, but the difference is the healing per turn becomes a lot better, or per use of the ability, if you will, is a lot better and a lot more efficient because of the reduced cooldowns. So the healing is about the same, but just more per use, just to give it a little more oomph, just to have let you deal with the enemies hitting you also. Okay, hi, I'm back over here. So works well with. So just to give you some ideas, I gave you some skill set ideas to run. Give you some ideas to what to run with this hero, with Maniac rework, and feel kind of good. And some of these are the same as live. So if you're using the healing style, probably needs either another healer or one hero that can heal themselves. That's really all it needs, though, in my opinion. So again, a Hellion, an A-bomb, a Leper, so that Maniac. This is good. This is good advice for normal Maniac, anyways. But with my rework, I think it's better for him. It's more realistic for him to be able to keep up the healing on 3 targets, on himself and 2 others, rather than 4. Because 4, you get in a situation where if you get a couple like Infernal Taskmasters and they hit you hard, or the burn's really getting you, and everybody's below 50%, it's gonna be hard, just because he doesn't have 2 really strong heals like Vestal or Plague Doctor do. It's gonna be hard for him to heal up the whole team. So this is really just to avoid those situations where your whole team is getting really hit, and having that single healer, same as like with a Banneret, is just not going to do the job. But I think having a Banneret with it, or having Grave Robber with it, or something like that, somebody that can heal themselves, I think it goes a long way in those situations where things are really, really struggling. Deadeye Grave Robber, this is one of my favorite combos, because, no pun intended, because he can, with Mastered Punish, he can knock back in the combo, and then Deadeye can hit that. It's a little opposite in the speed order. You would rather punish, or you would rather be able to punish first and then Grave Robber, so you have to kind of use the round transition in order to do that. But both with current Maniac and with my Maniac, it feels really, really good. I know Deadeye, I'm sure to some people feel like it's just kind of a worse sharp shot because it does do less damage, but the speed that she gets from Mastered Throne Dagger is actually really, really good. It allows you to basically just like delete enemies in some, or get close to deleting enemies, because it is 14, I think, on crit. Really, really good setup, in my opinion, both on current and on mine. So With mine, if you really, really like Necrosis, these are some setups for that. So we have Plague Doctor Blinding Gas, whatever path, because it can blind the 2 backliners. Physician Disorienting Blast, since that can hit 3 targets, that can set up for Necrosis really well. I don't know about Physician and my Maniac in general, because it feels like it's probably a little too leaning into like negative tokens and probably not enough into damage, but that would be a situation where you could play a more of aggressive kind of Maniac. Professor Hand of Light, again, I know nobody plays that other than me, I'm sure. But when you master it, it weakens the front line just like Barbaric Yop does. Try out Confessor Hand of Light, by the way. It's better than you think. You have to master it early, so that kind of sucks. But it's better than you think. It's actually really, really strong. Especially depending on the Kingdom faction you're doing. Really strong. Anybody who, probably not the favorite, put her in rank 3, throw her there. I think it's solid. Survivor Smokescreen is another good one because, I mean, that's where I got the inspiration for the more from. Survivor Smokescreen hands out blinds to the enemies, and he can necrosis from there. Or Barbaric Yop allows him to necrosis the front 2 enemies. Leper, again, this is another one that's current Maniac and my Maniac. Leper is really strong because he gives him the blind. Leper gives himself the blind tokens, which then gives Maniac access to blind tokens relatively consistently. And because of the self-healing aspect of him, it's 1 less person that he has to heal. I think that goes a really, really long way. So if you're trying to try out my mod, or at least for points 2 and 4, if you're trying to play a Maniac in general, I think that works really, really well, I think, for that. So I hope everybody enjoyed my yapping. Again, if you do decide to try out my Maniac, please let me know. Positive feedback, negative feedback. If you hate it, that's fine. That's all right. If you love it, I hope you do. I think it feels good, and I hope, again, like I said at the very beginning, man, the paths or the things that are so close to being good, you just need like 1 or 2 things. Those ones frustrate me the most. Again, all it needs is 2 or 3 lines in the patch notes, man. Maniac could be really good, and I do like it. It's a very good path. Again, please check the description for my trivia question and for the modders profiles and for my stream and for my Discord, etc. I appreciate you guys very, very much for sitting through this whole thing. If you have any questions, have any comments, please let me know. Subscribe and stuff. I appreciate it. Stop by on Twitch. Come say hi to me. I hope you have a nice rest of your day. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.